Hey guys, welcome back to the Hat House. Appreciate y'all tuning back in. In today's sales video, we've got a bunch of sports hats going out, and the ones that you need to be on the lookout. Several sports specialties hats and other vintage sports hats that are going out today. You'll want to see those. Also, we'll go over in this video how you can enter for the free hat that will be given away on our live this Thursday night. If you haven't bookmarked that, I need you to go bookmark that right now so you can be there for our live and your chance to win a hat. And we're going to be answering some of your questions. One of them is, how do we make money selling $7 hats? It can be tough, and it is tough out there in the hat game sometimes, but let's talk about how we make some money. All right, so let's get to the garage and see what sold. All right, guys, let's see what's going on in this lot. There are some really cool hats in here, and they got some great deals. The sale is still going on, and some people picked up some really cool hats for great prices. So let's see what's going out. First up was Phoenix Suns Sports Specialties. Went out for $30. It was a little dingy on the inside, but not too bad. It was Sports Specialties script. Really cool hat. It was the twill version, so that's cotton and polyester. Really nice hat. Good deal for $30. Next up was a nice combined order. You got 3 dad hats that went out for around $30. We got a Cubs, a Lakers, and a Miami Heat. 3 dad hats. Next up was a corduroy hat. Just said sugar pine on it. It was really well made. They got a great deal for $10 on this one. Strap back, sugar pine. It said keep it gorge. Next up was Sorry Mom dad hat. It went out for like $10. It was super clean, like new. Sorry Mom. Next up was this Cole Headwear. They can make some really nice hats. They make some nice corduroy hats and some really well made hats. This one was just had a little bit of wear in it. Was just a little more used. So it went out for $10, but some nice Cole hats can go for $20 or $30. This one was pretty cool. Next up was a vintage New Kids on the Block. Went out for around $13. Really cool kind of painter hat. Some New Kids on the Block stuff can go for $20 or $30. This one went out for like $13. Next up was a basic Nautica dad hat. Went out for $9. It was white. Pretty clean for white. Next up was a Harley Davidson fitted on the New Era tag, 7 5/8, great size. Went out for $15. Really good deal for the buyer here too. Harley Davidson always does really well. Next up was a Nike Featherlight hat, 5-panel. Went out for like $12.44 on sale. The sales price for these will really go up during the spring. You'll get closer to $20 for these types of hats. Right now, I'm just selling them to keep them moving. And somebody got a great deal on this Redman hat. They always do really well. They sell pretty fast. This one went out for $25. It was super clean, made in USA. It was just on the Made in USA snap. Had the Made in USA tag there, but the patch was really in great condition, and the hat was in pretty good condition too. Next up was this vintage Philadelphia Phillies. It went out for $14.48. It was missing the size in it, so I estimated that. It was still a really cool hat, probably from the early 90s. Philadelphia Phillies. Next up was this Tampa Bay Rays, really cool color, green. It was the Flex Fit 3930, large, went out for like $12. Next up was this vintage Washington Huskies. Huskies are doing really well right now. Their football team is doing awesome, so this one went out for a good price, $22.50. Had the buttons on it. I usually leave the buttons on them, especially if they go with the hat. Usually helps them sell even quicker. This one was New Era, so it was a cool hat. Next up was a Cincinnati Reds starter hat. Went out for like $37. They picked this one up quick. I'm sure they've been waiting for this to come onto the market, and I had it priced up enough that they were willing to pay to replace their hat. Starter hats are hit and miss. Sometimes they will sell quickly, somebody looking for one, or sometimes they take $15 to $20 and take a few months. It just kind of depends on what the buyer's looking for. Next up, our Dave Matthews Band hat sold for $20 pretty quickly. I never could really tell if it was vintage. I think it was because this tag was paper, It was really hard to tell by the clasp look newer and the strap look newer style. But really cool Dave Matthews hat. Next up was our Packers D-cut, diamond cut. We sold it quickly for 30 bucks. Most of the time these go for around 40 or 50. Mine had some discoloration right here on the crown. Just wasn't in the best of shape either. So I took the quick 30, which I usually will, and somebody can try and bring it back to even better life. Next up was another great Phoenix Sun hat. This one went out for $30. It was made by GCAP. Told you to keep a lookout for this vintage brand. This also had the baby blockhead on the back too, which is really desirable. So this one sold really quick for 30 bucks. Awesome vintage hat. Okay, guys, I think we got time for a few questions. Before we get to the questions, I wanted to remind you today is Monday, Cyber Monday, and on Thursday we'll be doing our live, and we're going to be giving away the hat, I Believe in Elves. So make sure you check out this video that I'm going to put up here. And so if you haven't entered yet to win the hat, that you go and do that. And then if you can, catch us out on our live Thursday. We're going to unbox some vintage hats, take a look at those, and then we're going to give away this hat and probably do something a little extra as well. So make sure you go and enter to win. Let's go to Mary and see what questions she has.
Okay, we have a question from Thrifty Realtor. It says, I got a U.S. Navy veteran hat. The tag says official licensed product of the U.S. Navy. Would you sell that? I've had issues with military hats in the past getting taken down.
Great question. I would probably sell it. I wouldn't have a problem. The thing that I do in my business is I sell everything as used. And usually when you run into problems with them getting taken down, some hats can be taken down. Like I've talked about, like the FBI, CIA hats. But I would probably just make sure and list it as used. If it's officially licensed, if it's not like, if it just says like retired Navy or retired military, I usually never have a problem with those. If it's like an official uniform hat, that's where you can run into more problems with like government agencies and stuff, being an impersonator. I don't know exactly what your Vero or takedown was for, but I would just read that again carefully, and maybe let me know exactly what it was for, and maybe I can answer it a little bit better. But I would list it as used, and you shouldn't have a problem. All right, guys, let's see what's going out today on Black Friday. I will tell you the low ballers are out today. Be careful out there. First up was a pair of Adidas running hats. These went out for $15. Next up was a pair of dad hats that went out for $17. We got the USF South Florida Bulls, and we got an Eddie Bauer Sports Shop, $17. Next up was a polo dad hat that went out for just $9 to ship quickly person, but they didn't want to pay for priority shipping, so I hope it gets there in time. Next up was a Caterpillar hat. This is a vintage cat hat. Went out for like $12. Kind of had the shorter bill, nice rope on it. It was super clean too. Nice cat hat. It was on the cat tag too. Next up was a Toronto Blue Jays. Went out for $7. This was a youth on the OC Sports tag. Toronto Blue Jays. Next up was the Golden State NBA Finals. Went out for $15. Nice snapback, new era Finals basketball. Next up was a pair of Nike hats. Went out for $19. This black one was a little rough. Had some discoloration on the inside. And then a yellow one, small swoosh. The Y2K gray tag version. Next up was an Oregon hat. Nike Oregon hat. Went out for $11. Next up was boat day boards. I think they make like paddle boards. Went out for $9. Snapback. This is a clean, nice hat. Next up was Under Armour visor. Went out for $10. Kind of the older version. Heat gear. One size. Next up was this nice New Era. I never could figure out exactly what P this was. It had these little spikes all over it. It wasn't exactly the Pirates or anything, and it was blue. 7 1/8. Went out for around $13, $14 just by calling it with the P logo. Nice fitted hat. Next up was a Columbia PFG fishing hat. This one went out for like $18. Really good condition. Nice long bill on it. Nice fishing hat. Still great condition. Next up was this Under Armour Pop Warner football hat. It went out for $10. It was like a flex fit, size medium. Next up was a Nike beanie hat. Went out for $8. Next up was this Etnies skater hat. Like it was corduroy. Corduroy snapback. Etnies. Went out for $12. Next up was this Nugler propeller hat. Went out for like $10, $12. Propeller hats. Doing better this past couple of months. Next up was this crown cap winter hat with the ear flaps on it. Fleece. It was size 7.5 to 7 5/8. Really still in great condition. Nice winter hat. Went out for $13. Next up was this Jiffy roll up. It went up for like $19. These could do pretty well between $20 to $30 to $40. It's kind of hard to find. They usually have really good prints and styles in these Jiffy roll-up hats. Next up, we had a Buc-ee's hat that went out for $10. Buc-ee's stuff always sells really fast. Not for a whole lot of money, but it flips pretty quick. And then we had a Top Gun hat. It went out for $10 as well. Snapback Top Gun. Nice patch on it. Circle around patch. Really cool. Then we had a Diet Pepsi visor. Vintage Diet Pepsi visor. It went out for around $10. And last up, we had a really nice sale on Poshmark. It went out for $25. It is a vintage Hard Rock Orlando snapback. It had the Hard Rock tag inside too. Got to be really careful about the fakes and remakes on these. They make a lot of Hard Rock stuff that they don't even really have a Hard Rock where it says that it's from. So just make sure to check these out. This one went out on Poshmark, $25. All right, guys, let's see what's going out today. A lot of good sales in here. I will be, if you've been following along, I am going to end the 50% off sale that I've had going on everything in my store. I'll be bringing that to an end today. It's Cyber Monday. I'll bring it to an end and I'll go back to my regular markdown strategy, which is just an aged inventory strategy. Sales were really good on Sunday. Saturday, Friday were pretty meh. But Sunday went pretty good. Hoping today's going to be really good too. First up was a Boston Red Sox Army cap, women's Army cap, strap back, went out for $10. Next we had a Notre Dame Fighting Irish, just a regular captivating like Walmart brand. It was basically like new. It went out for like $7. Next up we had a combined order going out. These went out for around $20 together. Two like lightweight running hats, 5-panel hats. Buyer wanted both of them. I gave him a pretty good deal. $20, $22 plus shipping. Next up was a nice combined order. This went out for around $27. A nice corduroy hat, vintage corduroy. It said Morro Bay on it. It just had really nice colors. That's probably why it's sold. And then this vintage NASA hat, vintage NASA trucker. This one was actually vintage. You'll see a lot of NASA hats out there that are remakes, but this one was, here's the tag. It said Made in USA on the snap and then Made in USA tag. So an actual vintage NASA hat. Nice corduroy hat. Next up was an American Eagle hat. I'm going to be late. I think it went out for around $9. Nice American Eagle hat. It was actually $12. Next up was a KVU hat. Went out for $15. Nice little KVU hat. KVU hats always go for $15 to $20. They're all made in USA. And they have different sizes. Some are small, some are large. So sometimes the customer doesn't really know that. But always make sure to put it in the title and check out what size you have on the KVUs. Next up was a vintage Seattle Supersonics. Went out for around $15. Buyer kept asking for $10. And even though it was damaged, which was in the listing, of course, showed pictures of the damage, I was not going to budge off of like $15. The tag was even faded on the inside, but you can tell this is a vintage hat, and Seattle Supersonics, hard to come by. Next up was another hat that I kept getting like $10, $15 offers on. This one ended up going out for around $23, $24. And I just kind of held on. I knew somebody would love this hat. It had great embroidery on it with the bass fishing, and it was case. Really nice fishing embroidery. So I waited. I knew somebody would pay $20 to $25 for it, and it sold. Next up, I've been waiting for somebody to pull the trigger on this one for a while. It is a beautiful hat. And Fjällräven, a great brand. I don't know if I even say it right, but it's a really nice brand. If you know clothing, you know that goes really well. This is a nice fleece winter hat. Went out for around $38, $40. It was adjustable. Really great quality hat right here. Buyer got a pretty good deal too, I would say. Next up was a great combined order, and it's just something that I can do in my store. Not all these hats, I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, go pick up each one individually, but this sale ended up going out for around $57, $60. And there were some decent hats in here, and there were some that were distressed, which some people don't mind. This was an older vintage Nike. Show you the old Nike tag in here. That's what the vintage Nike tag looks like. We had a Featherlight Nike hat went out. This vintage Patagonia went out. And sometimes, I mean, these will still sell. They don't get the price they used to. Sometimes good distressing would make even more. But now it just takes a long time. But some people are still looking for a good distressed hat. And then we had a regular Nike Air and a regular Tampa Bay 47 brand dad hat. All that went out for around $60. Great sale. Next up was a nice Tulsa Drillers near my hometown. It was 7 3/8. Really nice Tulsa Driller hats. Pretty sure I found this one at the Goodwill. Beautiful shape. I don't find many hats in my Goodwill, but every now and then I run across a good one like this. Went out for $18. Next up was a vintage CBS hat. CBS TV network hat. Went out for around $12. Nice little vintage hat. Next was a nice vintage Las Vegas Circus Poker Room hat. It went out for around $14. The rope hats are still doing really well. That style is doing awesome. So make sure you keep a lookout for those. They sell pretty quick. Next up was a nice San Francisco Giants fitted. It went out for $14. It was 7 3/8. Pretty newer, pretty modern. But had the nice side hit, National League. Just a little different. You don't really see it like that sometimes. It's a cool hat. Next up was an Oregon Duck strap back. It went out for $7. It's just on the Captivating, kind of a lower end Oregon Ducks hat. Next up was a nice vintage Caterpillar hat. I took $20 for it. Probably could have waited for closer to $30, but I was feeling generous at this time, and they made a decent offer on their first offer. So I took it. Had a nice big patch with the scrambled eggs. It was on the K-brand snap. So they got a really good deal on this hat. Nice hat. Next up was a Puma Flex Fit blue hat. Went out for $9. I think this was a little bit bigger size, large, extra large. Next up was a Miami Dolphins. I figured this one would sell fast. I think it sold in like 2 or 3 days. It was the orange version, kind of more difficult to come by. But it was just a regular 47 brand dad hat, and it sold for $10. Next up was a vintage trucker funny hat. I'd rather be pissed off than pissed on. It went out for like $11. Nice funny trucker. It was in decent shape. Wasn't great. Foam was missing. It had been cleaned out. But funny truckers, gotta love them. Next up was this Weatherby vintage trucker hat. Probably could have sold for more, but it had this kind of rust looking staining on it, and it was missing the top button. Went out for just like $10. I went ahead and took the offer on this hat to move it quickly just because it had the defects, and I would just rather move it than wait around. Next up was this really cool Alice Chalmers. It had this like scenic panoramic all around. It was really cool. It went out for like $18. I'll be honest, I didn't do a whole lot of research on this one. It might be worth more than that because I don't come across these panoramic ones very often. And it sold pretty quick, a couple of days. Next up was this Nest Cranes. And if you couldn't tell, we listed a lot of nice trucker hats this weekend and Friday as well. This one went out for $21. Had a nice, huge Nest Cranes patch on it. It was K Products as well. Had the foam cleaned out of it. Really cool trucker hat. Next up was this 47 brand Perfect Fitted, and if you've listened to me very much, you know that OKC doesn't sell very well, but they're playing well right now, so that's good to see. And then also, this one goes for a little more just because it is the Perfect Fitted, and it was a bigger size, extra large, kind of hard to find sometimes. So it sold pretty quick, and for $14. All right, next up was this Bud Light hat, really cool. About a year ago, I probably would have sold it for $30 or $40. Went out for like $17. Nice vintage. Bud Light just doesn't move as well anymore. Hopefully that trend continues to change because this was a beautiful hat. Had the bull on it. Bud Light spell out with the suede. Bill, $17. I took that offer pretty quick because the Bud Light hats don't always move the best now. Next up was this Chick-fil-A hat. Went out for like $10 in about, I don't know, 12 hours. I don't know why the Chick-fil-A hats sell so well, but they do sell pretty quickly. Next up was a nice vintage winter hat. Had the ear flaps. This was in beautiful condition. These just usually don't sell for more than $10 or $15 though, even though they are really nice hats. This one was size medium, made USA. Nice feltish fleece. Nice vintage hat. Next up was an Adidas hat, pretty much on clearance. Went out for $5. It had the suede bill. It just was not the cleanest of hats. Glad to have this one sold. Next up was a nice Columbia. Went out for $10. Regular snapback Columbia with a nice little Columbia patch on it. Next was a vintage Nike Oregon Ducks hat. It was fitted. It went out for $12. It was wool, so it was a nice little hat for $12. Just kind of had the yellowing on the inside of it. They still got a really good deal. Next up was a Patagonia, regular Patagonia hat. Went out for $10. Just regular snapback. Next up, this hat went out for $9. Had no brand, and I really just put in the title. I put vintage winter hat. I could tell that it was vintage just by the way that it was made. Was a strap back, but it was like fleece lined. That's why I call it winter, insulated, all those types of keywords. Not a great sale, went for like $9, but sometimes you just got to sell what you have and just use as many keywords as you can to try to catch that buyer. Next up was this Peoria Javelins, and I only know because I looked up this Arizona League. Really nice fitted New Era hat. Went out for like $19. It was a great size too, 7 3/4. Had a great logo on it. They got a great deal with the sale that we had going on. Next up was this vintage Houston Oilers. It went out for $15, and this would be more like a $30, $40 hat, but this was missing. This one came with like strings that you would tie in the back to kind of cinch it up and make it your size. Apparel One is still a great vintage brand, but Houston Oilers would make this a very desirable hat, but it just did not have everything that came with it. So I took the $15. Hopefully they can fix it up. Next up was a Kubota hat. Went out for $10. Regular strap back Kubota tractors. Next up was the Portland Trailblazers dad hat. Regular strap back. This was made by Adidas, $9. Next up was the Seattle Mariners fitted, really cool desert camo. Went out for like $17. Another good size, 7 3/4. They got a great deal on this hat on our sale. Next up was a nice Chevy hat. Went out for $10. It was vintage. It was on the Made in USA snap. Had the Chevy tag in it. Nice white. They got a really good deal for $10. It was in great condition, and white vintage is really hard to find in this good of a condition. Next up was a vintage camel hat. This went out for like $12. It was the lightweight nylon. Had the cool little embroidery. I have found that the price on the cigarette hats, though, haven't going down. Marlboro is still doing pretty good, but the Camel, the Cool, and stuff like that haven't been selling for as much. Next up was a Golden State Warriors beanie. Mary packages most of the beanies on her side, so this one must have been a little bit older. It went out for around $9. Next up was an American Eagle hat I had forever. Went out for $9. This one I've had a long time. Had the American Eagle tag on the inside, but was kind of like this knit on the front of it. Glad this one was going out. Regular snapback. Next up was another vintage Nike hat. Went out for like $10. White with the black swoosh. Here's the Nike tag on the inside. And it had a lot of yellowing in it as well. But nice vintage Nike hat. Next up was a Nike bucket hat. It went out for $12 as well. It was an older Nike Golf. It was lined on the inside. Really cool hat. They got a good deal for $12. Next up was a Carhartt, women's Carhartt Army cap. Went out for $10. It was in great shape. Nice plaid color. Had the kind of, I call it like a ponytail hole right here. If somebody knows differently, let me know. But I think that's why it's shaped like that. Next up was a couple of fitted hats. Went out for $25 together. We had a Boston Red Sox and a Colorado Rockies, 7 3/8. Just the regular New Era fitteds. Next up was a nice vintage Chevy corduroy rope. This one went out for like $18. It could have been in a little bit better shape. Probably could have got a little bit more, but it still had a really cool embroidery on it with the ladies and the Chevrolet logo. And it was youngin', $18. Really good deal for both of us. Next up was a nice vintage Columbia. Well, I don't think it was. Yeah, it was vintage. Nice PFG Columbia fishing hat. Went out for around $15. I will tell you closer. It's hard to sell them in the winter time, so that's why I took 15. But closer to spring, this is more like a $25 to $30 hat. But they got it on sale during the winter, and they got a really nice Columbia PFG fishing hat. Next up was this University of Tampa. Don't see that logo very often. It's just a regular Legacy college snapback hat. Went out for $7. Next up was a Reebok running hat. It went out for like $7 or $8 as well. It's a regular lightweight. Had pretty cool designs on it though. Next up, we sold it again. Really nice Dole Hawaii pineapple corduroy trucker hat. It went out for $25, $5 less than last time. So they got a heck of a deal. I'm sure the buyer will love it this time. Next up was this SpongeBob Krusty Krab hat. Went out for like $12. There was a lot of people out there priced between $8 and $15. So glad I got the sell on mine. It was in pretty good condition, pretty clean. Next up was this Microsoft Me Windows hat. Went out for like $19, $20. Always pick up the Microsoft stuff. It always does really well. This was just a regular dad hat. There are better ones out there, but this one for $19 in a few days was a really good pickup. Next up was another nice rope trucker hat. This was Santana, and it wasn't, I first thought it might be like the rock singer Santana, but this is actually a trucking hat. There's a trucking place called Santana Trucking. Still really cool rope trucker hat for $20. It was clean on the inside as well. They got a great hat right here. Next up was a Rocket League hat. These do pretty well if you ever see these Rocket League hats out there. I don't suggest picking up a lot of these that are branded like this by Jinx or anything. But Rocket League did well. It went out for $20. These were priced all over the map too, between $20 and $40. I took the easy $20 and it was in good condition too, so they got a pretty good deal. Next up was an Adidas Trefoil logo. This had the big Trefoil logo on it. If it didn't have the crease, I probably would have asked a little more. This went out for $10. And the ones with the big logos, these do better than the regular dad hats as far as sales price. Sometimes they take a little bit longer, but this was a pretty cool hat. The bigger the logo on Adidas, usually the better it does. All right, we got time for one more question. Let's go to Mary and see what she's got pulled up now.
Marcus Steves 3120 asks, where do you source your hats? I see some of your sales go as low as $7.50. I can't imagine you paying $1.99 at Goodwill to only sell it for a few bucks more.
That's kind of why I don't recommend you go out buying like bulk hats to start, because you have to be able to get rid of some of the hats that may only have like a $7 or $10 average sale price on them. So just picking out the good ones at the good Goodwill, I would recommend, and that's kind of why I show you all the sales. I mean, if I'm selling a hat for $7 to $10, that's probably not one that you want to be picking up. But like I said, some of mine come from like combined orders is really where I make my money back on those. When I sell 4 or 5 hats at a time and they're $2, $3, $4, $6, I paid for 3 hats and then sell them for $30 or $40 in a combined order. The margins are really good there, but yeah, sometimes selling them one at a time is not very good money. But I have to get rid of them. Sometimes I'll lot them up and sell them that way. But also, I just picked up some hats from Whatnot, and I'm thinking about doing a video about me sourcing from Whatnot and how I did there, and getting some vintage hats there. So if you guys want to see that one, I've kind of got it put together. Let me know in the comments if you want to see that video. I'd like to share that one with you, but let me know what you think about that down below. And keep the questions coming. I love answering them.